next speaker, Greg Mello, the director of the Los Alamos Study Group, who has come all the way from New Mexico to visit with us today. He will be talking about the challenges of the LANL pit production program, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much, members of the panel, for having me here, and very happy to share what little we know here with you. This is going to be a little tight on I had to make a presentation that would be useful in other contexts also, so you won't see it all here. This is the abstract, which only loosely tracks with what follows. I want to emphasize here that we don't really love pit production. We don't really like it. We don't really want it. But if pit production needs to happen, we think it should happen at the Savannah River site. And we don't think that it needs to happen right away. And that the schedule at the Savannah River site is supported by a broad technical consensus, that there's no actual rush. There's no pit gap, as Senator Angus King asked Jill Ruby, is there a pit gap? And she said, no, there's not. This is a hedge program. So it is also a program to make warheads for the new Sentinel missile. We already have enough warheads to put on that missile, very accurate, very modern, but the LANL production uniquely serves adding additional warheads to that missile. And from the arms control perspective, we don't like that. Let me see, we go a page down? Yeah, okay. Let me quickly run through history of LANL pit production. The LANL made pits in the very beginning of the atomic energy era. The director and senior staff of LANL wrote a memo in 1946 that said, let's get this out of here. We don't want it anymore. We don't want to do pit production or any other production at Los Alamos. So they built a pit factory at Hanford. And they moved the bomb production to Sandia, Kirtland Air Force Base. So from 49 to 2007, LANL was a pit R&D site, not a production site. LANL made 30 War Reserve pits over a 4-year period, really basically 3 years, maximum 11 in 1 year. After that, the facility was shut down for really 4 years for high mass operations due to some egregious safety violations. Well, there were criticality violations, but then when they shut it down, they realized they had a lot of other things. And as you know, if things are shut down for more than a year, you have to do a complete safety review, and they discovered even more things wrong then. Mm-hmm. So for 11 years, I think there's misconceptions out there that LANL is a pit production facility. It could expand pit production. LANL has no pit production facility right now, not for War Reserve pits. So here, this slide will just go past because that's the details of the early history. This is the details of the recent history of pit production. Now the pictures that illustrate this was the plutonium building during the Manhattan Project. They were terrified that this would burn down because they did have a fire in the uranium facility. So they built D Prime, which is at the end of DP Road. You can see the buses that brought people there. Transportation has been a problem. Housing has been a problem at Los Alamos, both since the very beginning. Another view of DP site. This is what it looked like in 1999. A lot of it was dismantled. It's now completely dismantled. And now here we are. This is the present plutonium facility at LANL. This picture was taken from the north looking south by yours truly. You can see houses in the foreground. At Los Alamos, they don't have the luxury that Savannah River has, having 6 miles between the SRPPF and residences. It's not a mile, it's about 3,000 feet. Underneath the airplane here is the Smith's Market and the main LANL town center. You should also look at the trees. Trees burn, and they have burned at Los Alamos a couple of times. It's not so simple to just cut the trees down because there are endangered species involved, including the Hemisalamander salamander lives under the trees and spotted owls live in the trees. And it also, Los Alamos has an image to maintain as a research and development campus. It has to be attractive. There are other issues which make it less attractive in the region, so being ugly would be a problem for them. Here is the plutonium facility. They do have decent security. This was pretty high above. Trish took these pictures. I think the door was off the airplane, and yeah, we were pretty high. And so you can see the narrowness of the mesa. I wanted to use this to illustrate there's no room to expand technically I-55 between the canyon on the north, canyon on the south. Canyon on the south is actually quite deep. In the foreground down below, lower right, that is material disposal area C, Charlie. There is a big controversy now between the state and the site as to the immediate what to do with that. The state wants it completely excavated. The site needs it for a laydown area for the construction projects at TA-55. They need a laydown area. This is a better view of the that excavation there was for the CMRR nuclear facility, which was canceled. One of the reasons was geotechnical studies showed that that facility could actually slide off the mesa in an earthquake. And we have faults bordering the site with shallow epicenters, active Holocene fault with a 7.0 or higher Richter scale capability. It is believed there were at least 2, possibly 3 of these earthquakes in the Holocene at Los Alamos. And I don't have a slide actually of the fault trace, which is very visible from the air. So that's as far as they got on that construction project, was leveling out the site. They were going to have to put in a 70-foot thick concrete foundation there to get down to firm rock because there is a layer of unconsolidated volcanic ash, basically powder, that was going to be the subterranean footing for that building. It's not feasible for a heavy building with safety class features. So it got very expensive and was abandoned. There's an aerial view, again, of looking almost straight down at PF4. It's very crowded. There are multiple missions inside that building, maybe 6 or 7, and there's almost no room outside of it. There are issues with the loading docks, other issues. PF4 is not the only facility where pits will be made. That, let's see, the top center, that's called the Sigma building. That was built in '53. It's not seismically qualified, doesn't even meet federal life safety standards. That has to be replaced. All these, the safety issues here are basically grandfathered in since there's no actual enforcement of that. It's not the DNFSB is not an enforcement entity, and they don't even really much go to that building. The beryllium manufacturing takes place in that building, as well as uranium work. Let's see, this looks up the Pajarito Road toward the plutonium facility. That's the old disposal site, Area G. Here is a housing development. You can see it's quite close to the nuclear waste disposal site. On your right, that empty piece of land there is the sacred area of the San Ildefonso Pueblo. And this is a major difference also between Savannah River and Los Alamos. There are about 2,000 archaeological sites within the Los Alamos National Laboratory, and this is an active area of Native American cultural and spiritual interest. The transportation grid was built for a smaller lab than now exists, and every day there's a traffic jam. We have, as the LANL deputy director calls it, LA-style traffic. This is an old slide. It was just, I brought it in here in case anyone thinks that Los Alamos has had a production mission for a long time. It has not. Los Alamos has tried to do something like this in the past and failed. That's not very helpful. This, they tried to build a big building where the CMR, nuclear facility, was later attempted to be built. That's a picture of it. We made quite a stink, and it was canceled because it was the early Cold War era, and there were other active plutonium facilities in the complex at that time, and Senator Bingaman helped us kill that. After that, they decided they would try to upgrade an existing early 50s building. Mr. Carr said 4-foot thick walls, interior. The CMR building, according to the Congressional Research Service, has 2-inch thick floors in some areas with chicken wire for reinforcing. After the Soviets exploded their first atomic bomb in 1949, there was a huge rush to build things. Savannah Riverside was one of the things that was built. But the CMR facility was built in a big hurry, and it was built on top of an earthquake fault, which was not known at the time. The CMR-U was at one time the largest infrastructure project at DOE Defense Programs. It struggled on for about a decade and eventually was felt to be unrealistic. There's a picture in the center of that slide of the big CMR building. It's the largest building at LANL. The fault goes through the northern wing. After that, then the next plan was a CMR-R replacement. The second R is replacement. And as I said a minute ago, that project failed. It was found to be basically infeasible. And we litigated and slowed that project down for about a year. But the litigation per se failed, but the delay it enabled Congress and the Strategic Command and the senior people at the labs to realize that a nuclear facility that was going to cost that much and do so little was not valuable to the country. So that's where it was going to be. And then some of these, they did build the CMR radiological laboratory, utility, and office building, even though they said it was not going to be what it now is, which is a nuclear facility. Hazard Category 3, and the other two buildings on the left were somewhat fanciful at the time. This was a slide of just what it takes to build a huge building in the Pajarito Canyon area. All that yellow stuff was going to be part of the CMR nuclear facility project. This project was going to sprawl in one way or another into much of Los Alamos National Laboratory. To do it all. And that was also a factor. After that, there was the so-called plutonium modular approach, which was sold to Congress, but that cratered in 2016 after a scathing review. It survived as a LANL-driven alternative in the engineering assessment up to 2018, where it had the highest risk and take the longest, and since then, it has vanished without a trace, and the current plan seems to be to use more workers more efficiently in a small space rather than to augment the hazard category 2 space. This is a rendering of the 3-module plan of the past. Now, the new plan involves using a lot of facilities in a lot of ways. And so I think this is important, certainly Congress, I don't think, fully understands this, that the plan does not just have PF4 in it, but it also, many other line items are involved, the transuranic waste facility, the transuranic liquid waste facility, and now we have also the Nevada test site is going to be taking some of the load for certification, and the Sigma building is involved. The Sigma building has to be replaced. And not least, Los Alamos, having hired 5,000 people in the last 5 years on this isolated site, a site that was selected for isolation, they can't house the people in Los Alamos. They cannot. There's a housing shortage region-wide, which creates transportation problems. So the laboratory seeks to open itself to build new campuses for classified research. They have about 500 people working in Santa Fe right now. They have 3 buildings leased, but this is something additional. This would be an entire, what they call a mini campus of Los Alamos National Laboratory. There has already been NNSA approval for such a campus, but it was rejected by the city of Santa Fe, but there's still talks going on, and we are trying to find out more about it. In addition to that, there are these other capital projects. Unlike at Savannah River, there's one giant project that encompasses nearly all the functions of pit production. At Los Alamos, in part because they had a pit R&D facility and demonstration production. There was some of the infrastructure already there, and the site has a mix of infrastructure which can be adopted. So you have this mission kind of spread out. And there is distant talk about PF4 replacement or augmentation, but the Senate Armed Services Committee staff tell me that's not going to happen as far as pit production goes. I said, what happens when PF4 craps out? And what's the plan? Well, the plan is Savannah River. And so that's as far as we know, that's the reality.
One thing, I don't know that everybody's familiar with the PF4.
Oh, sorry.
The PF4 is the building where the pit production is supposed to take place. It's an old building. I think it sits on a fault or adjacent to one or some.
No, it's
not seismic qualified, I guess.
Yeah.
And
It's getting there.
they have many missions in that building, but it's a fixed square footage. And so what was a full building is going to be much more full with the addition of the pit efforts and all of the changes that have to take place internally. So PF4 it's not equal to our old MOX building, but it's a key portion of the program for pit production at Los Alamos. So,
Thank you. This is a chart from the GIO that shows the 2 different philosophies or approaches to providing a pit infrastructure at the 2 sites. The SRPPF is down the left there. You can see that nearly all these essential functions of pit production are captured in the SRPPF, whereas at Los Alamos, it's spread out in these various places and various line items. Let me see. It's interesting. It was interesting to me and new that a report which was produced for Congress by NNSA pointed out that originally PF4 was designed for a staff of 100, and now it has a staff of 1,000 before this even really starts up. So I'm not counting the trades. I didn't know this until quite recently. So how many pits can Los Alamos going to make? We're, I don't know how deep into time we are, pretty deep. The idea is that Los Alamos would make 30 pits per year. And we are very interested in the ramp up to this, and the next slides discuss how that would ramp up. And installing the capacity to make the pits, I think the key point here is not the same as actually making the pits. And so there's the minimum equipment, then there's the moderate confidence in production, and then there is the reliable production that is expected. And then SRPPF will have to go through the same process of, but that's in almost another decade. But so the capital projects at Los Alamos are not expected to be done in PF4 until the end of fiscal year 32. That's the key thing here. There was a legal requirement to have 30 pits per year by 2026, but now that's, there may be 30 pits per year before then, but the reliable production is not The fully reliable production is not expected to be ready until the end of 32. Now, how many pits can LANL make? The answer is some, not too many. If through the time that Savannah River is expected to be in production run, somewhere in the 300 pit range is what LANL may be able to make between now and then, based on the preceding slides. Could they double this? We don't see any indication that that's planned, and we don't think it is possible, but this is a classified area, so we don't know. At one time, Los Alamos said that it could have a 100 pit production capacity for just $622 million in today's money. So I'm going to skip over that. As recently as 2017, the price of LANL pit production was going to be $3 billion. And then there was a very subtle thing that happened in 2018, that what was to be temporary and nominal got converted into permanent and to be at least 30 pits per year without any further cost estimating or schedule estimating. So the environmental assessment that was done by Parsons for the NNSA just sort of elided the question of whether LANL pit production was going to be temporary, and if not temporary, then what would it actually cost? And that was the basis used by NNSA to go ahead and invest in the two-site strategy. I'm going to leave you with the details, but for this presentation, we did a new workup of expected costs at LANL. And to get to reliable pit production at LANL, including the program costs, we are estimating that currently, it's not a big extrapolation because NNSA extrapolates this now to 2029. If you just use their numbers extrapolated out to 2032, you get $22 billion. So the total cost of LANL pit production, including the sunk cost, for 30 pits per year through 32 is $22 billion. Now the forward costs are currently estimated at 13.6. So the difference is the sunk cost there. This is a factor of 7 over the 2017 estimate. So the costs have inflated at LANL by a factor of 7 since 2017.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
in 7 years, the cost has gone up 700%.
Correct, sir.
How is that?
Partly by a definitional change. Hold on, I come back there, yeah. Under the Obama-appointed NNSA director, who finished the study under Trump, the conclusion was that PF4, because it is old, because it is crowded, and because it was built for R&D, and because it has about half a dozen other missions that can't be paused, should be a temporary pit production demonstration until a proper pit production facility could be built. So that was the conclusion of NNSA in 2017. There was a political intervention which said, oh my God, New Mexico's going to lose billions and billions. So, and the Air Force realized that if they couldn't get pit production quickly, it wouldn't match up with the possible need to put multiple warheads on the Sentinel missile. So those two political forces joined together, this is our interpretation, and said, okay, we're going to have two sites. But the original estimate at Los Alamos was way off and greatly underestimated the problem. So there was a change of definition from temporary and nominal into permanent and reliable or industrial. And then there was a basic lowballing that took place in 2017. And those two things created that sevenfold increase. And we should add the usual factors of COVID, lower productivity than expected, supply chain problems, and we could add the novelty of the mission. And we have heard that now Savannah River is helping Los Alamos with the production management part of this, which has always been the weakest part at Los Alamos. They don't have experience in this. And that, I think that naivete influenced those low decisions too.
But I had the occasion to meet with Pete Fonta
Yep.
from the Pentagon, and his view was that they couldn't risk not getting some minimum number of pits per year, and that where maybe someone would want LANL to do them all, their safety record and their ability to operate without violations was risky for them. And so in order to, in order to guarantee they got some, they went to 2 locations.
Yes.
So is that not still a concern, or is?
It is, and but as you'll notice, as LANL being delayed, the timelines are converging a little bit. So it's not as stark that way as it was, but that is constantly we heard from NNSA Administrator Gordon Hagerty that the 2 sites provided resilience, or I don't know, I prefer that to resiliency. But so these are the details of that estimate. I want to say that that estimate does not include the cost of opening a brand new LANL mini campus anywhere, and it doesn't include the new $300 million power line they want to build. Doesn't include the leasing of spaces they've already leased, and then there's the gray areas that I don't really understand where they fall on the budget line. So now what do pits cost from all this? At LANL, pits are going to cost somewhere, depending on what year you want to take as an average, but somewhere between $77 and $156 million per pit at LANL through 2039, or if you just look at the forward costs, anywhere from 58 to 96 million rather. And the farther out you go, the more speculative it gets, of course, but marginal cost of a pit runs to be in the $50 million range. This has a tremendous effect. If you were to include these numbers in the price of the warhead, this would have a gigantic effect on the warhead. It would increase it by a factor of 4 to 5. But if money is no object, and you have to have your warheads, like Mr. Fanta would say, then cost is no object, then full speed ahead. At Savannah River, pits will be cheaper. That's the old cost. This is the new one. The Savannah River capital cost estimates have recently been increased a lot, depending on who you ask. The budget request mentions SRNS bottom-up estimate of 18.5 billion for the capital cost, which is pretty high. But Dr. Ruby said, well, it could go up to 25 billion, really, according to her internal team that looked at this. She doesn't know whether this may be her last cycle of congressional testimony or not, and it seems to me that she's wanting to make sure that people understand just how expensive this is and get them used to spending money. But even so, because this facility will last for 50 years, being designed for 50 years, that is, and has a larger capacity, the and it has lower operating costs than are projected for Los Alamos. So these factors create a much lower price per pit. If you you get using, you can see it's anywhere from 16 to 20 $1 million per pit. It's about a factor of 4 to 5 to 6 smaller than Los Alamos over the life cycle of the facility, using this crude back of the envelope estimate here. You've already heard about workforce. That was a question I had. So Los Alamos needs 4,000 people, 4,105 to make pits. And we just heard Mr. Carr say that they need a little less than, or maybe 2,000 people to make pits at Savannah River. This is a pretty big difference in the long run in terms of costs to have doubled workforce. There are these. So the reason LANL has failed in the past, and the reason it's more expensive, is that the site and the facilities have inherent problems. So we mentioned the seismic situation, which is quite poor. It's also geographically isolated. There were calls for closure of LANL by the AEC in 1950 before the next big wave of investment. They said, why are we doing this here? The topography is highly dissected, which makes the site very difficult and expensive to work with. And so it becomes effectively a very small site. It's bordered by residences, national monuments, tribal lands, and it has these unconsolidated sediments, which are a problem. And it's obvious once you drive up the highway and you think about it, you see that in some places there are cliffs and other places there's just dust. And so the people who built the original highway to Los Alamos understood this, but it's the sort of thing that's so much in plain sight that the designers of the CMRR nuclear facility didn't get it until they did borings. So there's the site. I wanted to show you this site planning document from the laboratory, which those green and purple areas are excluded from. That was their view of what you couldn't use for improvements at the lab. It does not, these colored areas don't have earthquake faults, and they don't have archaeological areas, and they don't have buffers to the public or to the tribes. So they underestimate the unusable area. The only real area that Los Alamos could expand its nuclear facilities to cut short is TA6 there, that wide area in the center left. That is across a canyon from TA55 and would be extremely expensive to set up a plutonium facility there. These are fault maps. I'm quickly going through them. This is the detailed URS study, which is the official one. And those faults that go along the western boundary there are quite visible from an airplane, and that's the main fault. I include this because Jamie Gardner was really the main person at the lab. He was a wonderful guy, and these findings were so problematic that he told us that the NNSA, well, no, it was before NNSA, that DOE defense programs told him he could classify the geology of the lab if he was more comfortable with that. And so the isolation, they've thought of many ways to overcome this. Here was a plan that's quite recent, and many people think this plan will come back. The Native American tribes and historic Hispanic communities are spitting mad about a power line that would go across that same area to the east of the Rio Grande, which is called the Caja del Rio. And it would be a political disaster to proceed with this. There's the canyon that would have to be crossed. There was a previous plan that was shot down. That's typical, this would be one of the highest bridges in the U.S. This slide has a list of some of the existing missions in PF4. And I would also call your attention to the congressional report, Risks for Sustainment of PF4 at LANL, which lists 2045 as the implicit end of life for that facility. Now, that's a very subjective number. It used to be 2039. And I don't know how to interpret it fully, but that's what their report to Congress said. How resilient is this production? Since that's, a major factor here, we don't know. This is an area that is shielded from public view. It has been shut down twice for fairly long periods, as I mentioned in part. They have, according to NNSA, significant risks in staffing, program management, but that's 3 years ago, and they've been making strides. So I would say that the situation is better, and I'm going to skip all this. It's not entirely done. There continue to be safety problems, and part of it has to do with being crowded. Part of it has to do with the demographics. Los Alamos has an unusually large number of middle career and older people, more than any other site. 39% are retirement ready. And so there's a mix of very old people and then brand new people coming in that aren't experienced, and they're learning on the job. And plus the craft people, plus the security people. This is construction and installation in an operating hazard category 2 plutonium facility, and it's challenging. They have issues with waste management, and they have a big inventory of transuranic waste that's slow to get off the site, and those are the slides. I wanted to say that the labor market is it's not just undeveloped, it's also sort of undevelopable in northern New Mexico. So the traditional things that a good manager might do in a facility in New Mexico may or may not work. It's sparsely populated. We have the worst educational system in the United States. It's difficult to get medical care. It's difficult to find housing. We have a lot of violence, a lot of drugs. A man was arrested just last month. Yes, last month. He had a machine gun in his car. He had meth. He had fentanyl. He was on his way to work at the lab, but he said he was going to drop the gun off at his friends. And one clinic in Chimayo is in the feeder area of Los Alamos, uses 30,000 needles per month for methadone. We have a regional identity problem. What is northern New Mexico? Is it a Tony place to retire? Is it a tourism mecca? Or is it a nuclear weapons production facility? Could be one, could be the other, maybe to a degree, could be both, but there's conflicts. These issues are all, and this is what I guess I should leave you with, the issues interact and intersect in ways which are greater than the sum of the parts. The transportation, the land ownership and cultural values, the regional identity, the housing, these are tough problems, and they stem from unchangeable features of the situation that even the best manager would be very challenged to deal with. And then underneath it all also is that New Mexico has governance problems. And I don't know how much, to what how many months of the year the legislature here meets. We meet for 1 month, 1 year, and 2 months another year, in the alternate year. And we have enormous problems in the state, and the legislature is just not stepping up. And not just my opinion, but many opinions, we remain at the bottom of all these lists. So the Pajarito Mesa, I guess I would say, is just in many ways full. And when you take something that's full and you add a lot more, you're going to have outsized problems. And I don't know whether they'll be fixed or whether there'll be some modicum of success there at LANL. We would prefer that they trained, that they stuck to their traditional mission, which was the one supported by the senators up until the last decade, and by NNSA until 2017, 2018.
Thank you. I mean, all I can say is, whew.
Sorry for that. You can read the other at your leisure.
So, questions, folks? I've been out to Los Alamos. Had occasion to go out there about a year and a half ago and to see some of the facilities. And I concur with the idea of you got about 25 pounds of groceries they're putting into a 10-pound bag. And going up the hill on the road into town, you can just see the geological structure of the place and how you really can't expand. It was ideal for the original purpose because you could see anybody coming from a long ways off. But I hope that, for the benefit of the nation, I hope that Mr. Carr's efforts to train and send folks out to help them sort of get their feet on the ground with regards to production and 24-hour ops can be successful. But as you pointed out in your final statement, there may be systematic issues that even the best manager can't overcome. So, Jim, you got anything?
I haven't done 20 years ago a lot of work out at LANL. This is not a surprise to me. It's a research facility. Even the culture out there is R&D. In the days of Pete Nanos and that sort of thing. There are really brilliant people that work there. Yeah. Very smart. I think the smartest in the country work there. But it is not a production facility. It never will be. And outside of the geology, which making the drive up the hill, which I've done many, many times, it's not a place to make pits. I just think for us here, it shows the role and importance of the Savannah River side of ensuring that project is successful. Because there's no way in hell 30 pits a year will ever be made at LANL. I just don't see it. Okay, this I was sitting here listening to you smiling, knowing all these stories. So I think for us here, it's important that we maintain the focus and support for the Savannah River mission, because that is the real mission here. Thank you.
So if there are no other questions, I'm going to break with tradition, and we're going to, after that presentation, I've got to have 5 minutes to get up and walk around. So we so much appreciate the two of you coming out and joining us, and at your own cost and your own time and so on and so forth. But
Very, very much. It was enlightening.
All right. All right, we're going to take 5, and 5 minutes, the gong will ring and we'll start again.